Welcome back to OpenLine. We are talking with attorney David Raybin. For the first part of the show, we've been talking about Community Oversight Board. We're going to shift gears as we move into the latter portion of the show and talk about Tennessee, the use of Tennessee's electric chair and executions in Tennessee. Edmund Zagorski was scheduled to be executed several days ago. That was stopped. He asked, instead of being put to death by lethal injection, to use the electric chair. The governor put a 10-day stay. That 10-day stay will be up soon. The governor said today that Tennessee is ready to use the electric chair, and he has not changed his mind on I guess not having it be used on Mr. Zagorski. So, David Raybin, you represented the last person to be executed by using the electric chair. When I say represented, explain what that was.
He had fired all of his lawyers because they wanted to continue on with his appeal. And he requested that the court appoint someone to superintend his execution, to protect his rights at the time, to make sure that if there was something wrong that I could call the governor or a federal judge and stop it if there was something inappropriate during the process.
This was Darrell Holton, and this was 1997. You helped write the death penalty statute.
This was 2007.
Was it 2007?
2007.
So this was Darrell Holton, it was 2007. Okay.
Right.
So that's still a while ago.
Sure.
So Darrell Holton, 2007, the last time the electric chair was used.
Correct.
You helped write the death penalty statute.
When I was a prosecutor, I was asked by the Attorney General, I worked in the Attorney General's office at the time, to draft a statute. The Supreme Court had struck it down, and I was dealing with death penalty litigation as a prosecutor. So I was asked to draft that, and that's what's on the books today, the current death penalty procedure that we have. The method of execution has changed through the years, but the death penalty statute in the abstract, I did prepare that. And as an attorney, I think that the Constitution says in the most extreme instances that the state has the right to execute someone where due process has been applied, and it's the worst of the worst. Right now, our Supreme Court said that is constitutional.
You then do not have an objection to the death penalty, per se.
I believe if the death penalty is applied in an even-handed way where both sides are given a level playing field for the defense, in the abstract, yes, if you have the worst of the worst, the Constitution allows for that, and I believe that that is appropriate in limited instances where all the due process rights are in place.
What do you think about the use of the electric chair?
I have witnessed an electrocution. It is barbaric in the extreme. Death is instantaneous. You cannot question that. But all the things that lead up to it, all the process, the binding of the person, putting them in the chair, putting sponges on their head and water dripping down them and masks on their faces and the like, is barbaric. And it's inhumane to execute someone in that fashion. And I suggest that we should never have that. There may be other more humane ways of doing it, but the electric chair isn't one of them.
So what did you think when Edmund Zagorski's attorneys said their client wants to be electrocuted, wants to use the electric chair?
Well, the issue there is twofold. First of all, that man was scheduled for lethal injection within hours of the Supreme Court upholding that method of execution. His lawyers did what I consider being a very clever legal move. They said, well, we have the right to opt for electrocution. We're going to take advantage of it. The electric chair was not operative at the moment, and so the federal judge appropriately stayed the execution, and the governor stayed it so the electric chair could be put back in operation and do that. So I think his position is that lethal injection under current procedure is problematic. There may be some extreme pain or anguish associated with that method of execution. Well, death by electrocution is indeed instantaneous, and so if there is a concern about being killed by lethal injection, the electric chair would be an option. Let me make this observation first of all. I in no way want to diminish the crimes that Zagorski committed. I think they were horrendous in the extreme. And by discussing his method of execution and the like. I do not want to diminish that. But I do believe, as an attorney, that it diminishes us, and even have for the reason of having a death penalty, to debate these issues without some certainty. The death penalty does not deter. It exists for one reason, and that is to punish the person, and a societal statement that what that person did was so horrible, we're going to take their life in retribution. That's what it is. It should be done with dignity and decorum, and so that we're not having this constant debate which brings trauma to the victims' families, which is unnecessary.
That's fascinating. And again, when you were there to represent him, to make sure, I guess, his wishes were carried out in a humane way. When I say that, we're talking about Daryl Holton again. He wanted to be executed. He wanted the electric chair. And then you're brought in to witness this. And at what point would you say, okay, this is not right? I mean, what, again, could you do?
Well, first of all, I wanted to make certain that he was not drugged. So that his wishes and stuff would be, he'd be in some kind of stupor and wouldn't be lucid. And I was very confident of that. Also, the thing can go wrong. There have been instances where electrocutions have gone awry, and people have been literally cooked by an electric chair and not died. My job was, if that sort of thing happened, I had a direct line to a federal judge and the governor to say, stop this, because this is not being done according to the book, where there's some torture involved in that. That has happened, and that was my role. But also, I wanted to make, the government had me there as a witness so that they couldn't say something is done wrong, because the press never saw anything that I saw. I accompanied him down that last mile, as it were, from his cell, where the extraction team brought him, put him in the chair, strapped him down. None of the media representatives saw that. I did. But I wanted to make sure that that was done in an appropriate way, and that he wasn't tormented or tortured in any way, which could inadvertently occur. By having a lawyer there to witness that, that assures the public and the people that there is a witness there that is on his side, so that it's being done appropriately. And I felt that the government did that according to the book, but I had the right to stop it or ask it to be stopped if it was inappropriate.
And you think, even when it's done by the book, that this method is not the right method?
Absolutely. I mean, when he's sitting there in the electric chair and they put these sponges on his head for the connectivity and the like, and water's running down his face, it appears like the electric chair is weeping for its victim. And he's strapped down with all of these things, and they put a hood over his face. That is barbaric. Why in the world? We're the only country in the world that does that. There has to be a different way, or a better way, to do this without this ceremonial electrocution, which was designed, by the way, back in the 1900s to advocate AC versus DC, to show that one was safe and that one wasn't. I mean, it was a publicity stunt back in the 1900s. It is unnecessary to do it this way. I think it is demeaning to do this. Certainly it produces instantaneous death, there's no question about that. But I think we should debate the way the death penalty is imposed, as opposed to the discussion about whether we have a death penalty or not. Those are two very different discussions.
Well, and we've debated a lot whether or not we should have a death penalty on this show and all over. Less so, I think, about how it's imposed. Now, there are people that say lethal injection is designed more for the witnesses and those who have to watch it, because it appears to be a much more peaceful, I guess, for lack of a better word, death. That it's easier to watch. But it's, I mean, Zagorski's attorneys say that the last person, Billy Ray Irick, was tortured, suffered for much longer, and that while it may be easier to watch a lethal injection, it is much more painful.
Well, when you have an operation in the hospital, you have a physician who's dedicated to nothing but anesthetics for the patient. There's no physician there during these lethal injections. They can go awry. These bizarre cocktails that they have, that they're designed to do various things, I don't know that that's perfected, and I don't know that that is an appropriate thing. And there have been some studies in other jurisdictions that people's bodies are different. They react different to medication, and sometimes it's described as a drowning feeling. And some people say, well, you know, what about the victims and what they had to go through? The issue is we don't want to be like the killers. If we're going to execute someone, it should be done in a humane, nearly instantaneous method. That if that's why we have a death penalty, that's the way it should be done. And I'm not convinced that lethal injection under the current protocols are necessarily the best way to do it.
So it sounds like you don't. What does work? You're not a you don't support the electric chair, and you're also concerned about lethal injection.
Oh, I think I'm concerned about lethal injections under the way that it's being done today. I think there may be different protocols that could be used that would be more instantaneous. I mean, there have been various experiments. The gas chamber was once used, like in California. People would suffer for sometimes hours by being asphyxiated. Hanging was used, and people their heads came off literally. And so there has to be ways to do this that are more humane and that are considered appropriate under the circumstances. I will tell you that this death by electrocution is bizarre. It's medieval. And while we're going to have a death penalty, that's not the way to do it.
All right, we're going to take a break. We will come back, take a few more questions, take a break, be back right after this.